So, in talking with Tiffany, she tells me that he has a billing department, so I'll be able to work out payment arrangements. And so she still can't get over the fact that she hasn't talked to him in all of this time, and he's already aware of the case. So we're ready to move forward. So she gives me the number, I hang up with her, and I call him right away. And I'm like, "Hi, Jeff. This is Yorley Huff. Tiffany referred me." And he stops me. He's like, "I already know. And I'm so sorry you had to experience what you had to experience. I'm very familiar. I've already been following the case. I don't know if Tiffany told you or not. Um, but what I'm going to need is the transcript to get everything started. And I really feel that we have a really good chance of winning an appeal based on some things that transpired during the trial." So I say to him, "It's not a problem. What are you going to charge me? I'm already seven figures into this legal team in the first defense." And so he says, "Well, let's get the transcript and then we can work that out," which is all I needed to hear. So I then say, "Well, let me call the judge. Let me call the judge's chambers and find out the information on the stenographer, and I'll get right on it and I'll get back to you." I then hang up with him and call Judge Gottschall's office and talk to her clerk. And I say, "This is Yorley Huff. We were just on trial before the judge, and I'm filing an appeal, and I want to find out who the court reporter is, the information on the court reporter." And she says, "Oh, Miss Huff, I'm so sorry. Um, I remember you, and here's the information." So she tells me that her name is Colette Kumeth, a white female, and this is the contact number that you can reach her at. So I terminate that call, and then I call Colette, and I say, "Hi, Colette. My name is Yorley Huff. We were just on trial, and you were the court reporter on trial." And she says, "Oh my God, I remember you. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I was in the courtroom just thinking, how did you survive all of this? And I'm so sorry, but go ahead. That's not why you called." So I said, "We are filing an appeal and I'm going to need the transcript." And in my mind, I'm thinking, just give me a payment plan. That's all I need. But I'm patient and I'm silent because I want her to tell me what can she do. So she says, "You know it was a 22-day trial, right?" And I say, "Yes, ma'am, I know." So she said it was about 22,000 pages or 12,000 pages, thousands of pages. And so she says, "This is going to be a lot of money." And I said, "Okay, but I'm still thinking, just give me a payment plan. I don't care how much it costs. Just give me a payment plan." So I'm just silent. I'm letting her talk. And she says, "Well, you know what? This is what I'll do for you." She said, "If you bring me $5,000 in the morning and put it under my door, that'll be enough to get me started. I can't transcribe all of this at one time. So what I can do for you is if you bring me $5,000 in the morning, put it under my door, I'll get started. And then I will work through that $5,000 and I'll call you once I'm done. And then you can call your attorney and have the courier come and pick up that packet. And then you can make another payment. And we'll work it like that until we get to the end." And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. That's all I wanted to hear. Now, mind you, Colette Kumath does not know me. She was the court reporter in the trial that was 22 days. She didn't have to do anything. She could have just said, I need it all before I even get started, and I'll do as much as I can and I'll call you. And this was significant because it didn't have to go that way. So I called Jeff back. I let him know the plan, and he was like, that's perfect because I can't read everything at one time. That'll give us time to break everything up and section it out. And I'm real meticulous, and I want to cover all the bases because we only get one shot, and this will allow us to do just that. So let's get started. Call me when she's ready. I'll send the courier, and let's get it done. So in the morning, I leave even earlier. I get the check, I put it under her door, and I go to work. And now at this time, I'm working downtown at um, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I think, um, or ComEd, one of the two. So I put the check under her door, and we begin the process. And this went on for several months. And that allowed Jeff the time he needed to meticulously go through everything and get everything in order. It allowed for Colette Kumas to not stress herself out trying to get everything rushed and get everything transcribed. And I also had a leave to paying all at one time. So we go through this whole process for a couple months, and finally, we get to the end. And then Jeff is like, I need to go over it a couple more times, and I'm going to have someone else, one of my partners, go over it and make sure we're covered with everything. And then we're going to be ready to file the appeal. We get to the point where we're going to file the appeal, and it's important to understand that there's only a very small number of cases that even get selected to be heard on appeal. You can appeal, but that doesn't mean that they're going to pick your case to hear and grant you the appeal. So that's another process. We get to the point where we everything looks good. We've got everything in order. Documentation is in order. We've got the statements from the jurors saying that they knew that this was a bad situation. These were bad guys that we were dealing with, that they wanted to give me as much money as they could. But this defense that we objected to, that the judge allowed them to claim, um, was what's holding them up from voting guilty and voting in my favor. All of that's in there. All of the newspaper articles that came out afterwards, all of the attachments, everything is in there. So we file, and then we wait. And at this time, I am in deep, deep, deep meditative conversations with God. And not one time, not even a half time, a fraction, did it ever cross my mind that I would lose. And it didn't matter to me that we were in a 22-day trial and they were found not guilty. None of that mattered. There was nothing that I could hear or receive or understand that would ever lead me to think that victory wasn't my end goal. Victory wasn't mine at any time. It just didn't matter. And I had told Jeff, I'm willing to take this all the way to the Supreme Court, and not even death is going to stop me from winning. Let's be clear. So Jeff says, we've got everything filed. It might be a couple of years, but we'll have to wait and see. And in fact, a couple of years pass, And Jeff calls out of the blue and says they selected the case for hearing. So now we have to wait to see what panel on the appeals court, because there's different panels of judges, it's going to go before, and then we get a court date. So we wait again. And again, I must emphasize that at no time did I ever think that victory wasn't mine. I get another call sometime later, and Jeff says we got a court date. You only get 15 minutes. Each side gets 15 minutes to present, but we're going against the most all male white, the most conservative panel in the appellate system ever. And I say, okay. So we show up to court, and I'm in the courtroom, and I would been making payments as I always did, and I hand Jeff a check, and we're in the courtroom, and the case that I hear is a case of child molestation. A stepfather has molested this child, and he's trying to file an appeal to get off on the charges. And I'm talking to God as I'm sitting there, like, why do you have me hearing this case? Why am I hearing this case? And I'm not getting an answer, so I'm just trying to stay focused and wait for our case, my case, to be called. So they finally get to call Huff versus Sheriff Sheehan, Cook County Sheriff's Police, and State Police, and we go up. There's a state's attorney there representing the sheriff, and the judges start talking. So before we get to say anything, they individually and collectively ream the state's attorney. Like this was a zoo, this was a circus. How dare you manipulate the legal system like this? The judge was a part of it. We are disappointed. Like, how dare you? They are just taking this state's attorney apart. Every judge on that panel was well versed in every page of the appeal of my case. We were shocked. Then they come to us, and so we give our grounds for appeal, and they allow the state's attorney to talk. They tear into him again. We were in there for 45 minutes. And I said earlier, each side gets 15 minutes. They were hostile, they were upset, they were furious, they were angry that what went on in that 22-day trial in Judge Kotchall's courtroom was allowed to even take place. So they end our time, they dismiss us, and Jeff and I walk into the hallway, and we look at each other and just stare at each other. And then Jeff fixes his suit coat and tie and says, well, I guess that went well. And I said, you think? So he says, well, now we got to wait again to hear their decision. And by this time, I know for sure I'm working at Blue Cross Blue Shield, because when he called me again, this was another couple years later. I'm on my way to another floor other than the floor that I worked on, to a friend's birthday celebration that she was having in a conference room, and I have my phone in my hand. And just as I get on the floor, get off the elevator on the floor where the party is, I answer my phone. He says, Yorley, it's Jeff. We won. And all I can do at this time was just keep walking and dropping tears. I just was speechless. And he's like, Yorley, are you there? Are you there? I said, yeah, I'm here. He said, we won. We won. And he said, not only did we win, that the panel took away their defense. So they have no defense at this point, and they can't claim any other defense at this point. And he says now we have to wait. He said they reprimanded the judge for allowing the courtroom to get out of control, for her crying on the bench in front of the jury, for everything. Um, they said that the case is going to be remanded back to Judge Gottschall for settlement. And we've got to go back before Judge Gottschall. So I'm like, okay. So by this time, I'm in front of the birthday girl, and I just dropped to my knees in tears, and she's just like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And all I could do was say, "I'm sorry. Happy birthday. I've got to go." So I go to the restroom to get myself together and just confirm my faith in knowing that I was going to have victory. And it didn't matter what it took. It didn't matter what else I had to go through. It didn't matter how much it cost. I won. So that's only just part of it. We still have a whole nother process to get through. And we've got to go back to the judge, and then we've got to see if um, the state and the county recognize that they don't have a defense and they don't have a leg to stand on. So I follow up with Jeff a few weeks later, like, what's going on? And so he's like, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I said, well, don't you think you should call? And he's like, well, I said, Jeff, you understand what we've been through to get here. No one is happy in the political system, in the legal system, to see me win this. You have to call and follow up and get that tracking on that case file. Because what happens is the appellate division makes their decision, the file is noted, then the file is sent back to the judge. And that takes time. And that's a whole process. So Jeff calls, and the file is nowhere to be found. So he calls me back and says they can't find the file. I said, are you surprised? He said, no. I said, so what are you going to do? And he's like, well, I don't know. I guess I could call. I said, you guess? I said, Jeff, let me be real clear with you. You better make sure that you're calling every fucking day to make sure that the file gets back to the judge, gets on the judge's calendar, so we can get through this, so we can see where we are. And he's like, laughed and like, yeah, you're probably right. Okay, so get off the phone with me and call. So he's calling, and the file is mysteriously found, but it's not on the judge's key. How is this possible? Talking, following up with Jeff again, like, Jeff, where's the file? Oh, it's in the judge's office, but we're waiting to get on our key. Why is it? That's a 1-2 step thing. You get the file back, someone has possession of it, it should automatically be done. Make a call. So he calls and gets the runaround, and I'm like, call again. And I'm like, call they ass all day, every day until they do it. So he's calling back, and they end up finding the file on someone's desk under something. And so the person assured him that they would hand carry the file, get the file back on the judge's calendar so we can get this moving. In the process of this, the judge is reprimanded for her behavior in the courtroom and what she allowed to go on. The media was not interested. We couldn't get anyone to cover that we won the appeal. They absolutely refused, and no one was interested in our win on the appeal. They did write the case up in the law bulletin because they felt that it was very egregious and um, a misuse and abuse of the legal system. And what went on definitely should have never been tolerated, and it should have been handled differently. They were very clear about that. And from getting on the judge's court key, we go into a process that was newly created involving my case. Um, my case was the first case involved in mediation because the courts are backed up and they're trying to find a way to resolve, if they can, see if they can get the parties to come to some agreement. So my case is the first test case for that. So we don't even end up going back in front of Judge Gottschall. My case was referred to Orlando Keys. He was a black judge that mediated cases. And we began this journey of going to mediation. And Judge Keys was the only judge that the county had faith in to mediate cases for them or on their behalf. So we end up having a court date in front of Judge Keys. And our first date before Judge Keys, Jeff and I are sitting there, and there's two other male whites that walk in. And by this time, there's a new sheriff, Sheriff Dart, and he's still the sheriff currently. He was on working for Sheriff Sheehan and was aware of my case when he was working for Sheriff Sheehan, but he became the sheriff at this time. So we go in, the judge comes out, he introduces himself, and he says that he's going to take the plaintiff back first, and we'll start that way, and then he'll come back and get the attorneys for the sheriff and Cook County. So we go into his office, and he's like, how are you, Miss Huff? I said, I'm fine, Judge Keys. He said, everything going well? I said, yes, Judge Keys. He said, Miss Huff, I'm very familiar with the case, and I've read through the case file, and I see that you've been through a lot. He said, I'm going to try to settle this for you today, but 999,000 is not a million, but it's awfully close to it. I said, okay, Judge Keys. So he says that I'm going to talk to them and see if, you know, where their head is and who's here and if there's somebody here that could write the check, and we're going to try to get this settled for you. I said, okay, Judge Keys, no problem. So we remain back in chambers. He goes out and talks to the state's attorneys. So the state's attorneys are very far. After he talks to them, he comes back in his chambers and he's like, Miss Huff, I'm not going to waste your time today. And I told them that I'm upset with them on where they are with the number, considering what has happened and what has transpired, and this case has gone on long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and send you home, and we're going to terminate the session for today, and we're going to try it again another day.